great.
Right.
No, I haven't talked to anyone in a sit down two-way conversation like this before. Only the Twitter Spaces so
Mm.
far, which have been nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because
I heard. I was there on one of the live session, Twitter live session, and I was hearing you. I listened
oh,
to
you were
you.
nice.
It was I think Laila, Pen, and some other guys were
Mhm,
there. But anyways, I heard you there. Yes. So I just thought like, okay, why not? I mean, like when I saw your thread, right? That such a long and such a detail-oriented thread you made on that, you know, from where the disease comes, right?
mhm.
Uh, that kind of, gave me a little insight. Too many of insight, too much of insights, too much of answers which I was looking out for. And then I thought, why not for my viewers too? And a bit of questions here and there, which is, as a layman, we always try to find those answers.
Mhm.
We, I mean, like most of my viewers and me as well, I'm not coming from a medical background, but then yes, I can understand the logic. I can
Oh yeah,
understand the procedure process. I myself as a researcher, so I can understand a bit of what is happening out here. But then I just want to know from you, like, when was the first time you sensed something is off? Something is not adding up to the math what we know of. So just tell me a little bit about yourself, and then uh, we can jump into this first question I had. When was the first idea struck to you when you really sense that the things are not working out, the maths is
yeah,
not adding up.
yeah. Where it all started. Where it all started. Let's see.
Yeah,
The
for you.
the first clue I had was probably around 12 years ago. I had just gotten out of high school, about 18,
Okay.
19 years old. And
Mhm.
I got a question from a friend when we were sitting down and watching a movie. Neither one of us were very invested in the movie. And so I guess being bored from the movie inspired us to start just talk amongst ourselves. And the subject of the US presidents came up.
Oh,
And he said, you know, almost none of them are Christian or Catholic, right? And I said, really? I said, well, what are they? And he said, well, they're Freemasons. And I said, well, what's that? And then that's basically where it all started. And for that point on, I was so curious as because I had the assumption the entire time, especially living in America, that everyone believed the same thing. We were all Christian. We were all raised to believe in Jesus and act accordingly. And then I just thought it was very questionable that the leaders of our country don't necessarily believe in that. So that was like the first, and I'm all about people believing what they want, but that was the
right.
first thing that really raised an eyebrow. So that's when I started getting into it, and that's when not more than a month later I started to find. I just went digging on the internet, just like everyone does, right? And
Okay.
and then that's when I started finding this very, very detailed agenda for where global society was going to be taken one day. And so as a 19-year-old, I'm seeing all this. I'm realizing that everything I was just taught in high school was all the way up was pretty much a lie. And now I'm ready to enter the real world, the working world, and I don't know what to do. I had no idea what to do with any of this information. It was too much to process, if you will. And so the most rational thing I could think of was I just had to put it on the back burner and try to make my way and establish myself some way somehow. And if this comes up again, I'll go back into it. But so that's when a few years had passed, and I had worked a few jobs that were never going to be long term. And then that's when I had the idea for to join the U.S. Navy because my cousins had joined, and there were some benefits, and I knew it would also come at a cost. And at the
Mm.
time, I was well aware of what that was going to entail, but I figured it would be a really good opportunity to at least learn something really new and maybe be able to help people with that because I was never interested in fighting. I've never been
Right.
interested in fighting, and I think fighting in any form is a human failure. Um, I combat sports are different, but this whole thing of people going to war, I've never been a supporter of it as long as I can remember. And so when I joined the Navy, I was able to get into the medical field and do what I thought was going to be helping people. So I finished boot camp, and then I go to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, which is where all the branches have their medical go now. It's Army,
Mm.
Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. And so there I am in hospital corpsman school, learning how to be an emergency medic because it entails a few things. You learn basic nursing, emergency medicine, and a little bit of dental, a little bit of what do they call it? Like if you're out in the woods, you know what snakes to avoid, what how to purify water, like that kind of
Survival
thing.
tricks. Yeah.
Survival. And so then after we all complete hospital corpsman school, you can you can try to that we get what's called a dream sheet. Yeah,
Mm.
there's 3 lines, and you could fill out 3 destinations or 3 options that you can hope to get to have they choose for you. Basically, so there's a lot of things that hospital corpsmen can do. You can go with Marines and be a Marine medic because Marines don't have medics, the Navy supplies them. Or you can go to a hospital, you can go to a clinic, and you could go on a ship, but you could also get what they call a secondary school or a C school, where you go further into a specified outlet with medicine. So there was
Mhm.
surgery technician, pharmacy technician, X-ray tech, and the list goes down and down. And that's where I thought I was. That was like probably the jackpot because I was like, okay, I'll be able to learn a skill that I could translate out and back into the real world. So I had put down surgery, pharmacy, and an X-ray, I believe. And I ended up getting pharmacy because they need pharmacy techs like crazy in the Navy. There's a really big turnover, and they have a really big problem with retention because not a lot of people who do
Mhm.
of
Tough.
their first contract want to re-sign for another one because and based on all of our different experiences. So
Right.
I went to pharmacy school, which is the program that they have at Fort Sam Houston is the number one pharmacy tech program in the whole nation. And it's 6 months of school, which is it's a year and a half worth of information all in 6 months because the military is very, very cheap. They are not willing to pay for anything more than they absolutely have to. So it was safe to say all crammed in. And the big distinction between maybe doing this kind of course to work at CVS or in the military is that if you're a pharmacy technician on a ship, you won't have a pharmacist. You have to know almost everything a pharmacist knows. So it's way more intensive. It's way more hands-on. So 6 months goes by, and I worked as hard as I could because there was the prospect of getting to choose where your destination was going to be, and I really wanted to see what overseas was going to be like, whether it be Europe or Asia or anywhere. And
Right.
lo and behold, when our sheet came out, there was only destinations in America, and none of them were very glamorous. So I ended up choosing Naval Station Newport, Rhode Island, which is basically as far east on the United States as you can go. And it wasn't far from where I grew up in New York. It was only about 3.5 hours away. So when I got to Newport and started actually working in the pharmacy, the hands-on part, that's when a lot had started to change. Like to basically like answer your question, because what we learned in pharmacy school was that this we learned all the different diseases, right? And then we learn which therapeutics help each disease, and they don't really make the distinction of treating and curing. That's the thing, because we're all sitting here thinking we're going to be curing people's disease. So that's what I'm thinking. So we go off,
Mhm.
and now I'm in Newport, and now that I'm actually hands-on working, I'm seeing after about 6 months, I noticed two things. One, I had already seen in 6 months worth that I had already seen everything there was to see. Nothing was going to change. Everything I saw in 6 months, I realized that was going to be the next 3.5 years because it was 4 years at Newport. And then the next thing I saw was that it didn't feel like what we were doing was actually helping people. It seemed like it was just providing a band aid, if you will, for underlying issues that they really have. And over the course of that time, there was many different medicines that are so potent and toxic that we couldn't even use. We had to use gloves to handle them. Yet
Mhm.
people are supposed to ingest these. And so that was another thing I said to myself, well, how can that be safe? Because, and especially there's a one called methotrexate for rheumatoid arthritis. And it was back in the chemotherapy drug section. And yeah, it was so toxic that we could have worn a mask if optional to protect from opening the bottle and having the dust, the dust come out, and because you have to also dump them on the tray, count the tablets, and but it was gloves were mandatory because of reproductive harm. And all of us in there were in our 20s, so none of us wanted reproductive harm. And so, and that's what the one of the first times I said to myself, well, how can this be safe? Because if this is going to give someone, us reproductive harm, then how is it okay for someone to swallow this? So that was
Exactly.
one of the first times that I saw that maybe this isn't what we were taught it was going to be. And then once I broke the ice with a couple other coworkers there, they also agreed. It was just a matter of keeping those opinions to ourselves, because in the military it was like, you don't, if one of your higher ups catches wind of something like that you don't believe in what you're doing, none of us wanted to see what the repercussions would be for something like that, because you never know
Right.
what they do to you, because by the time they're finished with you, you'd realize that if they administratively separated you, that would be an easy way out. What
Right.
they do is they usually make your life as difficult as possible, and they have a lot of different ways to do that. But so that's when a year, 2 years, 3 years goes by, and by the time I was almost done with that contract, I knew that there was no way I could pursue pharmacy anymore. Even being a pharmacist, because that's what a lot
Right.
of techs want to
Right.
do.
Right.
Oh, let me take the next step, become a pharmacist. But I realized too that another thing that really didn't sit well with me, I lost sleep over some nights, was how frequently certain medications that are highly addictive were being given to children. And that's the all the medications for what they consider attention deficit disorder, or ADD or ADHD. And
Mhm.
this is basically synthetic meth. Like this is that's basically
Synthetic
what
meth.
drugs are. Yeah, it's it's methylphenidate and amphetamine salts, which is Concerta and Adderall respectively. And so, when I was learning about those in school, I had no idea how often I was going to see kids as young as 6, 7, 8, 9 be prescribed those. And then about 2017, I think there was a documentary on Netflix that came out that really exposed a lot of the dark side of that industry, the amphetamine industry. And it's not just children; it's professional athletes and all people from all walks of life are getting hooked on these amphetamines. And so that was another thing. And I even talked to one of my pharmacists about it, and he had watched the same documentary. And I was very interested to see what he thought, because here he is, he approves these prescriptions from doctors for kids for amphetamines all day, every day, all at least 3, 4, 5 times a day. Sometimes we would have a mother come in and pick up 3 different prescriptions of amphetamines for her 3 different children. And they haven't even gotten a chance to develop yet. And boy, the further you research into that whole thing with what they consider to be
So,
ADD and
kind of a
ADHD.
Pandora box. Yeah. Kind of
Yeah,
a
it's
Pandora box.
oh
You
yeah.
open layer by layer and then everything gets dirty.
Oh,
Dirtier
it
and
gets
dirty.
worse.
Yeah.
It gets worse and worse as you move along.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I was going through your thread, uh, in your first instances of your thread itself, and on this topic where really disease comes from,
Yeah.
you actually emphasized a lot about uh, the name itself. uh, uh, a germ called virus, why the
Mhm.
name has been given. So why, I want to understand, where did you get this idea from? Like, researching on the name itself. Why not? No. So the meaning has been changed from 2016, 1600 to 1700, and then 1800, and then 2000. All these centuries, the name has been changed from, the meaning of the name has been changed from what it used to be called,
Yep.
than what it is being referred to now.
Yep.
So why, you chose to start from there in your thread itself?
Well, I wanted to go in as good of a chronological order as I could have, because
Hmm.
I have to, the all credit goes to the authors of that book I use as a reference, "What Really Makes You Ill" by Dawn Lester and David Parker. They that book had completely revolutionized the way I see the term disease and what we consider to be medicine and healing and health and wellness in general. I read that book a couple years after I got out of the military, and I was looking for answers because at the end of that whole my military contract, that was the one
Right.
thing that upset me the most. That I felt like I had dedicated 5 years of my life of my young life to something that I thought was going to help people, and then I quickly saw that that wasn't the case. So of course, as when I got out, I was itching to know what is the truth. Then what is more concrete, and though so that's when I got put onto that book, and everything changed. I read it as fast as I could, which is it was an eight. It's almost 800 pages. It's like an
Mm.
encyclopedia,
My God.
and but every last page was worth it. And so I figured the best places to start was where they started, which was smallpox, because smallpox goes back a very, very long time. And from there, a lot of medical interventions have piggybacked, if you will, off of what happened with smallpox. And that was around, like you just pointed out, that was around the same time that they had changed the meaning of the word virus from poison to an infectious pathogen. And there's never been any real credence to that. It's all they basically weaponized that word. And and with smallpox, the two cases in the book that they had brought up was all the way back when the Spanish Inquisition in South and Central America, and then the more civilized world in America and the United Kingdom. And after I was done reading that section, I was needless to say, I was very stunned, because we've all been told, and it's not just smallpox, with every single disease going down the line, when you get up to polio, when you get up to HIV, all we have a story, and it's in our collective consciousness, if you will. Everyone, it's part of our culture. Everyone
Right.
believes the thing about these diseases. But none of us, until prompted, have ever looked into the validity of any of these claims of what we've been told. And it wasn't until I read What Really Makes You Ill that none of these claims about our medical history and our disease history stands up to scrutiny. This information wouldn't stand up in a court of law, much less even a layperson reading about the details, because what makes it into our history and our culture is big pharmaceutical history.
So,
It's their textbooks and their books that make it into our the social aspects of our life, that you know everyone, because that's one thing about dissecting the germ theory, that everyone has the initial questions about, just like I did. Well, what about the Black Plague? What about Spanish flu? What about all these things? What were they then? And the more you read the details the suppressed history, the more you find that what we've been told does not stand up to scrutiny whatsoever.
right, right, right. So coming to this germ theory of, so that, so our movement actually has been divided into, two parts.
Yeah.
One side of the resistance actually still feels that the germ theory prevails over the terrain, and
Hmm.
then the other side says no, the terrain is everything, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, so So which side are you on? Like the germ theory side or the terrain side? If you are on a terrain side, can you just tell me like why? Why do
Yeah.
you really think that the terrain prevails the germ theory? It's not the germ theory which is actually causing the illness.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That all gets summarized. I could summarize all of that in my transition from the military to civilian life, where I started taking my education into my own hands. My livelihood in the military, it depended on me believing everything that I was told about germ theory and how to
Right.
solve those problems. And then after I got out and was researching everything on my own, that's when I found that that was the first time I got any alternative view whatsoever. And after having been forced to study one and then voluntarily studying the other, it was it was clear. I mean, I can't really think of a more clever way to put it. It was as clear as day which one has much more validity to it, because one
Can,
thing
can
about
I say can I say this way that it is more logical in
yes,
terms of why the terrain theory has been suppressed and the germ theory has been given
oh,
a push to, right? Just to
absolutely,
establish the whole profit making business around it, right? So,
absolutely, yep,
it looks it looks sane, right? A sane logic, I would say.
without a doubt, without a doubt, because you know what, one thing that I thought was really fascinating from when I was reading What Really Makes You Ill is that they talked about what medical what the medical system, because it wasn't a system yet, but what medicine and health and wellness was before Rockefeller big pharma came and dominated everything. And it was not common, actually it was very uncommon for any medical practitioner before that point to be very wealthy, because
Mhm.
you would cure people. The whole point of people coming to you was that you would give them something, or you would do a spiritual technique or a holistic or homeopathic technique, and you would have those people not come back to you. And if they had to come back to you, they would be angry, because the whole premise was, hey, I'm coming to you to get for you to fix me. Why do I have to keep
Right,
coming? But over the when the Rockefeller big pharma came in and drove out holistic and homeopathic medicine, it became commonplace to have a regular visit with the doctor. You keep coming back over and over and over again. And the same thing when I was in the pharmacy. We would have people come to the clinic multiple times a month, every single month. And that's not how it's supposed to be, even though that's what we've been conditioned to believe now. And once you realize the vested interests that you had just mentioned, like you said, it clear as day. It's completely logical why this germ theory lie has been so prevalent, because it's been a multi-billion-dollar industry for years now, so many years,
right,
and it's a complete monopoly. It's they that's the whole that was the whole point of the work that Rockefeller had done in the 50s and 60s to drive out any other form of medicine and get America first onto what they called modern medicine or allopathic medicine, and the rest of the world followed suit. That influence spread, especially with the help of the Rockefeller funded and created World Health Organization, which is currently leading all of the medical interventions and all the medical tyranny that we have today. And they're all rungs on the same ladder to the same goal.
right,
And
right.
once I
So
found out all this, that's why um, allopathic medicine and germ theory, in my eyes, had been exposed, and
yeah.
the terrain theory had um, the door was open, and the terrain theory, in my mind, made so much more sense as to what disease is and where it really does come from, and what we must do to get ourselves back to a state of harmony and homeostasis.
So let me come straight to the question. Where does actually disease come from?
I believe, from everything I've read so far, because I've read a few different books that are both metaphysical and physical, and because a lot of what really makes you ill is the physical. the 3D, everything that we perceive through our five senses. And I've also read books about the metaphysical. And I'll start with the metaphysical because I think so much of this that's where a lot of this really comes from. And at our base or in our base form as human beings, we are nothing we're simply electromagnetic energy. Everything around us is electromagnetism. And what they've been saying for many years about the seven chakras, the auric fields, it's all real, it's all true. Science has tried to make that seem like it's been quackery all this time, but that is exactly what how our body functions and what our state of being. It's just oscillation, and we have seven different points where we have energy that is supposed to be flowing in harmony. And when there is a blockage of any one of those, that is where disease truly materializes from into the 3D as what we call symptoms. And then let's see. Now down to the physical part, the symptoms, right? So there's a few different things that can cause any set of symptoms, and that's where what really makes you ill does a phenomenal job at showing the everyday products and everyday things that we are surrounded by in our environment that easily contributes to a state of disharmony. And I really do believe disease comes from a combination of a couple things: the a person's mindset and their overall energy field, and then on the physical level, what they're being exposed to,
Right.
things merge,
Day in, day
and I
out.
think really what's going on. There
Right.
is there is disharmony in the mind field, and then there is the environmental toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis through our air, food, water, our clothes, our household cleaning products. The list goes on and on. I mean, you could,
Right.
you feel almost overwhelmed the deeper you go in. And I really do believe that is really, in a nutshell, is where disease comes from, the combination of those two things. And identifying that as the source is half the battle. Once you realize that that is where this is all coming from, and what the human body really is, what our toxins are and our environmental toxins are, then you could start to make those positive changes that you were previously unaware to, and get on the road to being someone who never gets ill anymore. I've known a lot of people
Right.
that
Right.
are seeing this
But then,
information
but
don't
then
get sick.
a lot of arguments, in with respect to this, comes from people around. They say, like, if it is not there, if germ theory doesn't exist or something like that, then how come, millions of people around the world, they're doing, you know uh, enhancements, medical enhancements on, or I would say, the scientific advancements on uh, germs, microorganisms, right? Uh, like gain of function theory. We
Yeah.
have heard a lot of time, right?
Oh yeah.
So a logical, question comes: if it is not there, then what exactly are they, working on? What
Hmm.
exactly are they trying to gain the functions of, right?
Yep.
Uh, and then such logical, yeah, it's a logical question,
Hmm.
like why there are so much of doctors and scientists who are working and researching on all these microorganisms and trying to improve upon their capacity to infect, or trying to test the infectiousness of all these microorganisms.
Yep.
So if it is not there, then wasting millions and billions of dollars, uh, that should not happen, right? That is not supposed to happen. And these are the only ones who we are accusing of. They are the only ones who are actually investing in them, right? So what exactly are they trying to do out there? So do you have any answers around it, around
Well,
this question? Hmm.
yeah, from what I've read, and from what people I've talked to have also told me, because we have entered spaces with people who do this for a living, and all the things that we're talking about now. And what I can to summarize it, they're doing on a daily basis step by step procedures with all their tools and all these things that they've been told with genetic material that they've been told to believe is pathogenic. And I think the what people would have a hard time wrapping their head around is that all these materials that they're working with, this genetic material, it's not pathogenic. It's just genetic material. I mean, that's all there is to it. And
Mhm.
there's been a lot of people who realized that they're what they were doing in the medical profession in regards to all this. It was a lie. Like that, Dr. Stefan Lenka in over in Germany, he'd gone to court over this whole thing, proving that um, I think it was over measles, and he was saying that all their procedures that they do, they don't use a controlled method to it. So in other words, the procedure they go through to prove that they have a pathogenic virus and that this virus can cause cell death. Well, it's a procedure that the first time that I read it, it's called the Enders method. It's what they've been doing since 1954, and from a guy named I think his name is John Enders, and it's basically a step-by-step procedure with a cell culture because they stopped trying to infect people with healthy people with from a sick host, which is what the Koch's postulates were all about. They made the excuse that that was no longer what's the word ethical. It was not medically ethical to keep trying to do that, even though you can find study after study after study before 1954 where they tried introducing fluids of a sick person into a healthy person and could not get these people sick. It just would not happen. And so they go over to the Enders method where they no longer have to worry about that anymore. Now they're going to do everything in a lab behind closed doors. And they're going to, well, all they do is they take the fluid sample from a sick host and they have to do what's called isolation and purification, which to me, isolation means you get just what you're looking for in that sample and you get all the other genetic material and debris away so that you for sure have what you're claiming is it not only exists but is causing the disease. Well, the first thing they do is add a whole litany of more genetic material to the sample. So if you were looking for something, the last thing you would think you would want to do is add more of a mess to the mess that you're trying to peel away. So that's step one. It doesn't make sense. It's fetal bovine serum, and then along the course of this process, they add uh, nephrotoxic antibiotics like streptomycin, gentamicin, and this is a monkey kidney cell that they're experimenting on in this culture. So So altogether, they add genetic material, they add a chemical that is toxic to the kidneys onto a kidney cell, and they also deprive this sample of any nutrients. And then when that sample dies and the cells break down into fragments, they say that's the virus. The virus has done that.
Yeah, I mean, like the logical question arises here that, if if you had to do so much of processing, you had to poison your cell with so many varieties of other items
Hmm.
to break the cell and then, try to grow your viruses out there. How, I mean, like, isn't it little contradictory to the situation where viruses on its own they grow within your body and within the cells, right?
Yep.
I mean, like in a cell culture, you're trying to do a lot of things, right? To break the cell and then find out the genetic material of the viruses. Uh, but then that's a lab, and
Yep.
inside the body, it is automatically happening on its own. It is happening. It
Hmm.
doesn't have any, uh, what to say, like any. Uh, it doesn't have to take any effort to actually grow on its own.
Yeah.
It automatically grows. So that's where the logical, question comes, or the logical, fallacy comes, that, in lab you have, with a lot of poisoning, you are breaking the cell and trying to grow your viruses, replicate your viruses. but
Yep.
not here,
Yeah.
which is kind of questioning, right? Which kind
Yeah.
of contradictory, right?
Absolutely.
Anyways, yep, yep.
Because we're told to we're asked to believe
And
that that process is a replication of something that happens in nature.
right, right,
Yeah.
and that begs another question. Comes in my mind all the time. Uh, that how does it transmit from one cell to another?
Hmm.
You know, it infects. It leaves your cells and then goes to another cell to to infect it. Right.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to imagine it. I don't know exactly how does it happen, but then I'm just trying to imagine like a microorganism sitting within a cell. It has only the power to grow within itself. How does it transmit from one cell to another? Do you have any idea around it, like what exactly uh, the establishment says to us? How does it happen, and then what logical problem in that explanations which they are trying to give us?
Yeah, so they taught us this was part of our training in pharmacy school as well to
Mm.
learn the pathogenicity of viruses and bacteria and fungi. And so what they had mentioned about viruses, they explained the whole process that this very submicroscopic microorganism is first of all neither dead nor alive, and that's another thing about the medical establishment claims. Some claim it's alive, some claim it's dead, some claim it's neither. They're not all on the same page about the very nature of this organism that they're claiming not only exists but is causing all this disease worldwide and has been for many many years allegedly. And then they say that it can spread through the air, it can spread through contact, it gets, all this and all that. And, it gets it somehow they have it's like and it depends on which computer generated image you're looking at, right? Because sometimes a virus looks like this little, it has like a little head right here and it has some legs right here. And then other times, like it's like a ball with little spikes all over it, like we're told with SARS-CoV-2.
Right.
And and these little spikes they attach onto the cell and then they transmit their they permeate the cell membrane. They get into the cell, they make copies of themselves, the cell dies, and then more virus comes out, and now there's more virus to be able to spread. The only problem with all this, and I think why you have a hard time picturing it, why I have a hard time picturing it, is because nobody on planet Earth has ever seen this happen before. Nobody. This is not no one has seen this happen under a microscope. No one's seen this happen under an electron microscope. This process has never been seen before. Yet look at how many things have been done in the name of this alleged process. And yeah, it that was another thing that I almost had to read two or three times in the book that no one has seen this happen before, because with how much has been done in the name of this process, you think surely there must be at least one or two people out there that's seen this process. There's not
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I mean, like I tried reading about it. The inception of so-called microorganism uh, virus. It happened in 1892 when they were trying to research through tobacco leaves, and
Yes.
they filtered time and again, and then they found something which is not getting filtered, and that is what they've called uh, submicroscopic level of microorganism, whatever, a virus. So my point was, and I asked this question to a lot of people, that when in 1892 itself you had such a filter, you know a paper filter, or I don't know what kind of a filter you had, but then
Yep.
such a filter you actually invented in those days in 1892. You have a, a, such an advancements in 2013 23 now, right? Why can't you actually invent a paper, a filter paper which can actually filter such an organism, and show it to everyone, that this
Yep.
is what we are looking at, right?
Exactly.
And then the second question, I always, it comes around my mind that, when a small microorganism can eat up your lungs fully, when they actually show you your report card, right, that the lungs is like at 50%, or 75% is like already eaten away, right? That the lungs is all, gone. 75% gone, 80% gone, 90% gone. You are about to die now, right?
Hmm.
And these kind of medical reports I've seen, some of my friends have shown. Uh, that's where the next question comes to me, that, if such a small, microorganism can actually infect your lungs, eat your lungs, 75% of your lungs, 85% of your lungs, then why can't you actually look at it, with some machine? Can't you just locate it
Hmm.
directly, rather than, putting it into a cell culture, poisoning it through a lot of different chemicals and other things, and then you break it up, and then you find a genetic, a small primer, and then, try to match it with the template you have already fixed template,
Yeah.
and then you say that this is the sub uh, microscopic level particle which is called virus.
Yep.
So that's where my mind and the whole logic gets stuck.
Yeah.
The I mean, like, how exactly are they proving that this is a virus? I mean,
Yeah.
like, I can call it a submicroscopic level particle. Why should I say that this is a virus, a poison, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and I think a lot of us have gone through the same exact logical algorithm that you just described, because everyone who's taken the time to actually see what they're putting forward as their evidence comes to the same conclusion. It just doesn't make sense, and it's full of contradictions. Like you said, we're in 2023, and we have, like, some of the advancements that we have are absolutely incredible. Yet it's been all this time, over 100 years now, and there's still no sure proof, surefire way that this they can show us this is what it is. This is what is causing disease. Nope,
Right.
they do all these things in a lab and more or less manufacture a process that way. And it's funny that you brought up the in 1892 as well, because what I thought was very telling about that time period into the early 1900s, especially with when you get to what was known as 1918 flu,
Hmm.
is they couldn't prove that it was a bacteria. So the next step was to say, well, it can't be, it's, I guess it's not a bacteria, it must be a germ that's even smaller that we can't see. Instead of thinking, okay, maybe it's not a germ, maybe it could be something in our environment that's poisoning all of us. No, let it's instead it must be something that is even smaller that we can't see. And then they go further and further and further down into the logical rabbit hole, I guess you could say, which is a very illogical one. And and all the time, all these, Pasteur and all these guys, they win these awards one after the other. They win awards for the rabies vaccine with Salk, and all these other guys. They've all won these awards, but look at their methodology. Look at their papers. They proved absolutely none of what they were claiming. And it was very famously said by Pasteur at the very end of it all that the germ is nothing and the terrain is everything. He spent his entire life trying to prove that germs
But then,
causes in
but then,
immune.
Anthony, my point is, yeah, I mean, like, whatever they do, with the help of cell culture, centrifugation, or anything, whatever they are doing in their lab, I'm just trying to understand. They are, somehow able to find some particle out there after the cell breaks. They're able to
Mhm.
find some particle, right? Uh, which has a genetic, material, uh, even if it is a primer, matching it with the template what they have created with the help of computer simulations and all.
Yep.
However, still they are able to match it, right? My
Mhm.
point is, what exactly are those? I mean, like, something is there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to call it a virus or microorganism. I can say it's a particle, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, but then what exactly is that? That question always comes in my mind. That yeah, I mean, like something is there which has a genetic expression, or even a breakup of a genetic expression that matches with bat, maybe some other animal, some other, I don't know what, but then it matches.
Yep.
So what exactly are those? Those questions always comes to my mind, that and that then it's really become difficult for me to actually uh, you know to satisfy my curiosity itself, that
Right.
they're trying to find something and they're able to find something, even though their logic is little deviated from the topic of finding the pathogenicity of a particle which is infecting your body, creating illness and all. However, they are able to find something. What exactly are those?
Well, from what I had read in a book called The Contagion Myth by Dr. Tom Cowan, what that particle really is referred to as an exosome. And he's not the first person to say that. A lot of doctors and scientists have been saying this for a long time, that the that what they refer to as a virus is nothing more than than a particle called an exosome. And basically what they're saying that this particle does is it's simply a messenger to other cells and other places in the body that something's wrong. So this little particle has had the frame put on it, just like they put the frame on bacteria for causing disease. When bacteria have never been proven to do anything besides gobble up toxic material and help clean us up. It's the same thing
Right.
for these exosomes. They've had the frame put on them because all the exosomes are trying to do is get to as many places in the body as possible to let the body know something is wrong. We have to act now because we are being exposed to a toxin of some sort, and we have to come clean it up. And that is basically, and the exosome is a byproduct of cellular death. And when the cell dies, it breaks off into these exosomes, and that's when the process starts. These exosomes go to other cells, and they're informing, they're messaging, something's wrong, something has to be done. And the way the analogy he put it, to Dr. Cowan in his book, was that they're basically the firemen in our bodies trying to put out the fire. And what they've done in virology and with germ theory is they're pointing at the firemen and saying, you see, they're there every single time we have a fire. They must be the cause of the fire then. Well, that's just
Mm.
ridiculous because, just because something is present at the site of an alleged infection or any sort of disease, that does not mean that they're causing the disease. And if anything, they're probably trying to help. And sure enough, that's what a lot of people are starting to see now, is that these particles, these microorganisms, they are trying to help what's going on. And then that goes into fungus, bacteria, virus, protozoa. There's never been any definitive proof that any of these things cause us any ill health. They're all trying to help the problems that we all have, because we're, like we were saying, like we're exposed to so much. So that's what I fully believe is being pointed at. What this piece of genetic material is an exosome, and that's what they're that's where they're getting these sequences from. And like you said, the preset sequences, they it's a very, very clever trick that they've pulled, because these genetic sequences, lo and behold, they can be found in anybody, especially with the utilization of the PCR test, which can be, in the inventor's own words, Carrie Mullis, you can find anything you're looking for and make millions and billions of copies of it. So basically what they've done with SARS-CoV-2 is they've claimed that they found the genome. They have sequenced this genome, this long list of A, T, C, and G. They've taken it, put it all together, and now they've programmed this test to find a part of it here, part of it there, part of it here, part of it there, and put it all together. And then they say, "Yep, that's our in silico genome." And in silico is computer models. That's all it is. It's computer models. I don't know how people can honestly believe that that translates into the real world. And that's where, so much of this is the claims have come from. I mean, for example, Christian Drosten out of Germany, he was responsible for coming up with the PCR protocol. Well, how did he do that? He didn't have a virus to do it with. He did not have a sample of SARS-CoV-2 to do it with. He got sent the genome sequence from the Chinese laboratories, and then he made the PCR protocols based off of those sequence that he saw in basically an email. So he made a protocol for a test that was to be used worldwide based on a virus that he didn't even have a sample of himself. This is
Mm,
ludicrous. This is
yep,
crazy.
yep. So I was talking to someone. We come from you know Hindu culture, right?
Right.
And so this guy, he is uh, a kind of a saint. You call them, you know people who, you know don't marry, don't do anything. I mean, like, they go to
Right.
Himalayas and then guru kind of people, right?
Mhm.
Yogi, we call them yogis and all. So
Yeah.
we were just discussing, and then uh, you know uh, and this question, it came to my mind, and I asked him, like, scientifically it is proven that there are some particles, and they're able to match their the fragments of fragments of genetic sequences. They're able to match it with the templates what they have created from the first uh, coronavirus, whatever they have found. uh, so what could it be? And this guy, this yogi guy, you know, uh, he was he. I mean, like, he was not coming from a science background. However, the kind of idea, or maybe the assumptions, a lot of assumptions have been made even in the scientific advancements too. So he was also giving some of the assumptions, which I kind of found little logical. So what he was trying to tell me is, uh, we humans, our DNAs have developed in millions of years, right? And when we say we have developed from millions of years, uh, we have come across multiple animals around, right? Animals or living organisms around, and slowly we have developed our immune system accordingly, isn't it? Uh, when we meet people, or when we meet other living organisms on Earth, we share our uh, the genetic fragments, I would call it. uh, isn't it possible that, when the Earth formed, and when the millions of years passed, and like Carrie Mullis also says that, if you try well enough with the PCR, you can actually, down to the quantum level, you can actually go down to that level and find any genetic, primer fragments of any microorganisms or organisms living on the Earth. And that's where, the kind of logic this guy was trying to give me, that makes little sense to me as well. you know uh, because of the millions of years we have lived on the Earth, it's quite possible that, we, as a human being, we must have come across, millions of living organisms in these millions of years. And our cell, our DNAs, they might be containing those fragments of, the genetics, or the genes, I would call, of all the living organisms of the Earth. Quite possible. I don't know. I mean, like, how far it is scientific and all, uh, but it looked little logical to me. Uh, because that's what Carrie Mullis is also trying to say, that, if
Yeah.
you try well with the PCR, you can actually find any organism within the body, right? How come, a gene, a genetic fragment of you know of a bat can come inside my body, right?
Mhm.
Or can be inside my cells, right? Or so that's where, my mind goes off. You know?
Yeah. It's
we think we know a lot of things, uh, and we see, a lot of scientific advancements all throughout these years, but we still feel that, we know nothing.
Yep.
Maybe a 1% of what this whole science we know of. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more because the more I read about the origins of science and comparing that with what people used to believe in from all the different periods of time, it seemed like science was presented as the art that was going to enlighten all of us. But the funny thing about what science has done, especially with so what we know as scientific dogma, is that it's only driven us further into the dark. I mean,
Yeah.
at least prior to science, people believed in a higher power. People believed in a lot of things. Well, science has said if you can't see it with your eyes and if you can't perceive it in your everyday reality, then it must not exist. And so now, we've seen this wave over the past 100 plus years of people who no longer believe in God. People who don't believe there are any external consequences for your actions. And this is what goes into what's known as dead materialism. And there's been a lot of people that their names are going to slip my mind, but there's been a lot of I would say yogis and gurus over the years who identified this, that the West is going solely for dead materialism, and what that was going to do to not only Western society, but when that trend is uh, promulgated across the world, and because that's really where everything comes from. So much of culture around the world does originate with the United States, and not that that's a good or bad. I mean, it's being used for bad, but which is what I believe is disconnecting people from our roots, and that's where it really comes down to. And I think that's what science has done with a lot of people, is disconnecting us, further disconnecting us from who we truly are, what we're doing here, and where we come from. That's and people don't even want to ask those questions anymore because they believe that science has proven that none of that's real, none of it exists. There is no God. There's no one watching, or once you're dead,
Right.
you're
Right.
on. We're just sacks of meat, and we just cease to exist. And not only is that very pessimistic in my opinion, but it's not backed up by any legitimate science either. Because even according to the electromagnetic spectrum, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is about 0.05% of what can be seen in the known universe.
Hmm.
Then we live on a frequency band, or in a frequency band called visible light, which is 0.05% of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, in other words, as human beings like me and you right now, what we're looking at in our space is a fraction of what actually exists. A fraction of a fraction. So, in other words, human beings are virtually blind. We can barely see
Wow.
anything. And so to think that in that 99.9999 going on percent of of um of the electromagnetic spectrum and beyond is just nothing. How could that be, right? Just like with
Right. Right.
what
Right.
all these people had said um
Uh,
the
uh,
intelligent life too. It's
one good example for our viewers to understand, the sound, what we can hear.
yeah,
Uh, that should be like 20 decibel or more, right? But
yeah,
it doesn't mean that the sound doesn't exist lesser than 20 decibels, right?
ex-
That is how the other animals, they are able to hear it, isn't
yep.
it? So so yes, you're very much correct, Anthony. That when you say that, what we can't see doesn't mean that they cease to exist. What we can't hear, it doesn't mean that, those words have not been spoken. Anyways, so
And that's one thing that I found very interesting about, like you brought up with the animal kingdom. I mean, at one point of our lives, in our lives, all of us have looked at a group of birds sitting together, and then
yeah,
without sound, without a sight, without anything, they all get up and fly together immediately. And I always
yeah.
wondered, what is that? How do
How?
they know? all to do it at the same time? Well, that's because they're in tune. They're in tune with the electromagnetic field that we're in, which is the same electromagnetic field that me and you share around the world. I mean, that's what it all is. We are in a sea of electromagnetism. And that's a huge part of where disease comes from is that sea has been poisoned. And once people get to once we get back to realizing that that is really the true dynamic of what is of nature here, the more we will advance as a human population and as a species, and develop methodologies and technologies that will empower our species as opposed to enslave it, like so many of these scientific advancements. I
Yep,
mean, look at
yep,
so many of these interventions, these technological interventions. Not only have they come at a cost to our health, but they've only served to further put us in you know enslavement, if you want to call it that, which is, I mean, that's
yeah,
exactly what it is.
yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely one of the parts about researching all of this that I found the most liberating in a sense actually was the not only the electromagnetic spectrum, but that human perception, the five senses, is just, it's like training wheels on a bicycle. And we've been
Hmm.
told the whole time that nothing exists outside of these training wheels. But once those training wheels come off and we do see that there is so much to be discovered outside of our sight, outside of what we can hear, outside of what we can feel, then life on a global scale will transform for humanity in ways that most people couldn't even believe possible. And I really do, that's one of the things I focus on and I visualize so as much as possible is that kind of future, the future that where we don't have to be in a state kept in a state of survival anymore. How am I going to eat? How am I going to feed my family? How, what's going to happen to me if I don't follow these rules?
That's the chain of system has been created. Yep, you're right.
Absolutely. And I very much look forward to that day. It's gonna be absolutely phenomenal. And, the amount of progress that we can make in such a short time is going to really make people's heads spin. Just like even, Nikola Tesla said all those years ago that if science dedicated, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but if science dedicated as much to what you studying what you can't see as opposed to what you can see, they would make more scientific advancements in 10 years than they have in the whole previous history of science. And he's absolutely right. And that's why he was such a trailblazer. He was trying to give people free energy, and we would have had it if it wasn't for, the powers that be. And but it's they've only delayed the inevitable, in my opinion. They've only delayed the
Yeah,
inevitable because that technology exists. It's just a matter of time until it's in the hands of the human species.
yep, yep, yep. Sooner the better. Sooner the better. Right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely, right. Because I'm sure all of us right now think, are all
Yeah.
agreeing that those days can't come soon enough, right?
Yep, 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 yep. It was so nice meeting you, Anthony. It was so great. It's actually kind of my first interview I placed on my YouTube channel. Earlier,
Wow.
yeah. So and it's been like two months. I haven't shoot any video uh just because I was a little busy in Twitter. Uh, I found Twitter kind of little aggressive in terms of reaching out to the authorities and other guys in terms of confronting them, in terms of asking questions and all. And that's the reason why I actually shifted my focus from, the YouTube channel to Twitter.
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah. But it's really nice. Twitter now currently the way it is functioning, it looks like, and if it continues, if it persists, I feel like we our generation will have a lot of you know uh, uh, new topics which they never thought of. They'll come across. Like for
yeah.
example, to be very frank, in last 2 years itself, I came to know about germ theory. I never knew about
Mhm.
it,
Yeah,
and when I came to know, obviously, the circle where I go, they also will come to know, right?
yeah.
And then few more like that, right?
Yep.
So I feel like Twitter is really doing great job in terms of keeping people aware, keeping, you know, moving them from the mainstream media news to the real world, what is happening, where it is happening, and what is happening, right? And who is talking about what. So,
Yep.
so all those things, if really we want to know, we go to Twitter. We don't go to any mainstream news media
Yep.
nowadays for authentic news and all.
Yep. And that, I think that's something that people are gonna learn more and more as each pass by with each passing day. That if you want to find out anything, you got to look it up yourself and don't
Yes,
rely on some
on any.
big industry or corporation to tell you, because they do not have our best interests in mind. And like you, I completely agree. I'm very, I could not be more surprised about Twitter, because for the last 3 years, for most of that 3 years, I was convinced that there was no way any new ideas were going to be able to be shared, because there was so much I was reading about censorship. And
Mhm, mhm.
that's the problem with the social media, that it was it was always there to be taken. Being able to have something big that they got everyone a part of, and then be able to censor anyone they want, because now they
Yes,
can just censor people with artificial intelligence. And I'm like you, like these past 3, 4, 5 months, I mean, wow, I cannot believe I've been able to reach so many people. I've been able to have conversations with so many people, that it feels like we've all been, like we're all finally getting
blocked.
to
Yeah,
realize, oh, we are all here, like, because in 2020 and 2021, boy, did it feel lonely, like knowing that outside of myself, there wasn't a whole lot of people around me I could talk about any of this to. And I knew it was all true, though. I knew this was all the truth, and that people needed to know this. And I kept telling myself, I know people are out there like me. I know they're out there, and one day we are going to convene. And I just had no idea we'd be able to do that on Twitter. So I'm telling you, I thank God every day that, no matter what, we all think about the big picture about Twitter and Elon Musk and what might be going on behind the scenes, because you can't really trust everything on the surface. But one thing I will always be thankful for is this opportunity. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it
yep,
wasn't for what's happened on Twitter. So yeah, I'm very thankful, and I hope that in this window of time that we can do stuff like this. I really hope that people are going to see more and more of that one example. Sometimes it just takes that one thing for people to see, and they never go back. It
yep,
starts the
yep.
domino effect, like it did for all of us, right? So,
Right,
yeah, I'm
right.
gonna be more thankful, and I'm also honored that this is one of your first conversations, because it is mine too. And these are the talks that I really look forward to. I mean, I never imagined I'd be able to have a conversation like this with someone from all the way around the world. So this has been a dream for me. I've been looking forward to it since you messaged me.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Anthony. Uh, let's conclude this call. Uh, so, yep. I think we have touched upon uh, all the questions of where does it really come from, uh, what happens, like what does what do these bacteria do in our bodies, right? And
Mhm.
calling those particles a virus, or you can name it anything, right? What's in a
Yeah.
name? A great saying is there. So that we also talked about, and then we also concluded that there is a realm, beyond what we see, what we hear,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So these are really great food for thoughts for people who actually want to, are actually curious enough to investigate themselves, right?
Yep.
Uh, yep, yep. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining me today.
My
This
pleasure, my friend. Yeah, it's been a dream come true being able to do this. So yeah, and hey, I've always got I could always make time to do things like this in the future too, because there's
sure.
uh, look,
Sure.
we've probably discussed a fraction of what there is to discuss. So hey, anytime, yeah, let me know, and we could definitely do this again too, because it's been so nice to be able to talk to someone such as yourself.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Anthony. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Have a nice day. Bye.
You have a great night. All right.
Is it there? No. Close.